Welcome. So today it is Burr Cash Flow Investors, and it is Friday. And so on Friday, generally we try to share an experience, a story of a investor, an experience maybe I had in my own life, and we. So the whole point of it is it's a story, and then it's basically what are kind of the lessons learned, really, right? I mean, that's kind of what it is. So story, what happened, and then what were the lessons learned. And this is not necessarily to, sometimes, you have to poke fun of yourself, laugh at yourself, or learn from somebody else's experience that happened. And especially as it relates to real estate, relates to life, the question becomes is, I always look at it this way, that whenever we do something, right? A lot of times when we do something, we don't do it because we want to fail, right? I don't believe somebody goes and says, "Oh my God, I'm going to start a new business because I want to fail," right? Nobody does that. But yet, are there things that happen in life where you sometimes fail, doesn't work out? What happens? And whenever that happens, I feel there are two types of things you have to think about, right? And what you have to think about is that if I failed or something did not go wrong, was it outside factors, meaning factors I could not control? So let's say you're going down the highway and you're minding your business, you're going highway speeds, you're driving properly, you're not texting and playing with your phone, you're doing what you're supposed to do right on the highway. Now, somebody loses control of their car, or what happened in my case when I'm going down the highway and somebody loses a wheel and the car just snaps. I mean, boom, I T-bone him. Nothing I could have done, right? There was just absolutely nothing I could have done, right? I totaled a brand new, at the time, Maserati Gran Turismo, right? So $150,000, boom, right? And I lost 30 or 40,000 bucks in that deal. I just bought the car 2 weeks ago, before that, at the time when it happened. So that's called an accident. There was nothing that I was doing. I was paying attention to the road, driving by the speed limit. Everything was good. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and boom, it just happens, right? Nothing I could do. So my actions did not cause it, except that I was driving on a road, right? The other driver's actions did not cause it, meaning that, well, obviously, if his wheel just goes flying, probably he was driving a car, in this case, a small SUV, that probably the guy was not doing too well for himself, right? So it was kind of broken down thing, and boom, it goes. But did he intentionally, obviously, make that accident happen? No, it was one of those things. It happened, right? So that's called an accident. So sometimes what happens is that you can do everything by the book, and you can study. You can, meaning you can study the market. You can do everything, and yet something can go sideways. You can go wrong, right? So some of you may have heard me relate this is not a story, this is a true thing. Back in 2012, I got this idea. A friend of mine, Freddie, he owns some really successful cigar stores, and I opened a fancy cigar store. I thought this would be another side business, right? Another way of collecting cash flow. I'm not going to be there. I'm going to have a manager run it for me, and this will be great. So I tell Rahul, "Hey man, we're going to do a cigar store." And I have another friend of mine, and we basically go buy a building, about a 4,000 square foot building, commercial building on 159th Street, Tinley Park, and I opened the store. Took me a year, and literally right before we opened, I was so sick and tired of dealing with this stupid headache that I was like, man, let's just sell it, right? Get rid of it. The third partner I had, he wanted to buy it out. And Rahul was like, man, no, we've put in so much effort, so much time, that let's just keep it, right? The problem with that whole situation was this. I had done the research. I had gotten advice from the best people. And some people, of course, Miss Mary was one of those that she's like, "Andrew, why do you want to do this? You sure you want to do this?" There are a few other people. But I was like, maybe it'll be, Freddie makes a lot of money in his business, and we think it's a great location. Everything on paper, right? When you look at the store, when you look at how we fixed it up, when you look at the location, everything that we can think of, right? And even till this day, I don't know why it didn't work, but it didn't, right? And ended up that I didn't have the time because I'm not going to go, it's not worth my time. I mean, if it's going to make 100, 200,000 a year, even if it makes 300,000 a year, or even half a million, I am not going to go park myself all day at the store and basically and deal with all the stuff, right? I mean, just not going to do it. Once in a while, I like to go to a cigar lounge, have a cigar too, but that's it, right? So I was like, there's no way I'm going to go do that. So what ended up happening was I had somebody running the store for me, and Rahul doesn't smoke cigars, so Rahul wanted nothing to do with it. And basically, pretty much after about a year of this nonsense, we're making no money, right? We're barely breaking even. If not anything, I lost probably $100,000 in inventory because people are just stealing me blind, right? And we ended up basically giving the store, not giving it, selling it to somebody. They're trying to basically buy it. So we kind of owner financed it for them, and they're still paying it off, right? What my point of that particular story is that's not the story for today. But what my point for that is that in that particular case, I thought, to the best of my knowledge, I had gotten somebody who's an expert, who's run many, many stores, right? And he runs the stores and many successful businesses in that business and does very well for himself. I got advice from him. I get every single thing. But yet I'm not willing to be there because I don't want to be an owner operator in that case. And so I was like, if that's what's going to cost me, I'm just not going to do it. I'd rather lose money rather than me take my time. It is not worth it for me for 100, 200, 400,000 bucks. It's just not for my time. Now, at one time in my life, obviously, I would, oh my God, right? Are you kidding me? If I can make 100,000 bucks, I'd have been happily done that. But I'm like, I'm just not going to be around that much smoke, this and that, and all this stuff. I mean, even for somebody says, hey, $1 million, go show up there every day at 9 o'clock, and the store is open till like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, manage the store and all this nonsense. Even for $1 million, for me personally, today in my life, it is not worth it, right? At one time, it'd been a different story, right? I'd have been jumping for joy. But again, things happen. And this particular place didn't do well. Now, even if tomorrow they pay us what they owe us, I still own the real estate underneath. The real estate underneath is fine. The building is great. So no problem. So there are two things, the business and the building. But regardless, everything said and done, we're going to end up taking probably a $250,000 loss in that particular deal, right? Somewhere in that ballpark, if not a little bit more. But regardless, it doesn't really matter what it is. Whatever money was invested there, it is what it is. Nobody wants to lose. I don't think I want to lose $200,000-300,000. Rahul doesn't want to lose that, certainly. But it is what it is. Is that the end of the world? No, it's not a big deal. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that is an incidence, or that is a situation where I fully was aware. I'm aware today what it is. Don't like it, but I understand. So there wasn't a certain action that I did that I could have known what was going to happen, or somebody that was educated in that business around me that knew what was going to happen, right? Sometimes you do it. A friend of mine, Freddie, opened one of those types of stores on 22nd Street, which is busy street, Oakbrook, middle. Store didn't do well, yet he has one in Lyle, exceptionally well. Huge, big store, 18,000 square foot store, right? Does exceptionally well. He has another one in Humidor of Westmont, does very well. Sometimes things happen in life where you can't say, okay, this was it. You missed this, Andrew. That's why it didn't work. And the reason I wanted to relate that is a lot of times what happens is people will do something, and then they'll say, well, Andrew, something failed in real estate because it was the market, because it was this, because it was that. It's an exterior factor. Now, so there are two things, right? If there is something that happens where you should have known something. So I'll give you an example. That's what this story is related to today. So a little while back, there's a property that somebody bought. And this is a property in Park Ridge, right? Park Ridge is a suburb. So when I was asked, and I'm not going to mention who it is, but it's somebody, right? They are no longer in Mass Street, right? Basically, we're like, this is not a behavior that we will tolerate. But anyways, so this person buys it. Somebody very close to me gives them a loan, and they're a huge, huge, huge part of Mass Street, and they give them a loan. And when this loan was done, this property was kind of a farmhouse type of a property, old property, bought from a state. And my point to this person was, when I saw the property, I'm like, listen, this is a great location. It's such a great location that you don't have to do a thing. What I would do is this: I would empty out the property, make it just clean, broom sweep it. That's it. That's all you have to do. Broom sweep it, put the property right back on the market, and you'll make about $70,000 minimum for less than 15 days worth of holding costs on this, because it will sell, and it will sell like it's on fire, like boom, right? The person goes, well, no, Andrew, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to do it my way. I'm like, listen, man, please, I beg you. You're from Mastery, right? I don't understand a lot about a lot of things in life. I do understand a little bit about real estate, right? And that too in the sector that I operate in, which is the rentals, the Airbnbs, and the flips. This is something I understand. So just please, and you paid a bunch of money to be in Mastery, just please follow my suggestion. You will make money instantaneously. And it's like, well, no, I want to try it. I'm like, listen, you've done bankruptcy twice in your life before, right? You have a marginal track record of doing 2-3 flips. 2 of them worked, 1 of them did not. Yet I think if we compare track records, I think this is something that I understand a little bit about. So please listen to me. No, I'm going to do it my way. I'm like, why would you want to do it the way you're suggesting? So, well, I think I can make $150,000. I'm like, listen, you're not going to make $150,000 on this property, especially not the way that you intend to do it. It's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, well, it's obvious, right? And it's obvious because unless you, what you can do is this: you've bought the property at a really good price. You can inflate the price. The market is very hot. Somebody's going to just look at the area of Park Ridge, and they're going to go, oh my God, I really want the property because I want the location. It's A schools. It's close to the trains. It's just, you cannot go wrong with this, right? So somebody will make an emotional buy, and they will overpay you for the property. And it's an old farmhouse type of thing. The plumbing is old. The electrical is old. The outside is old. The windows are old. I mean, you just don't even know where to start, because there's 2 things that you make money on in this property. Now, it's already a 2-story on top of that. But the problem with the 2-story is the staircase is very narrow. I mean, literally, right? I'm not a big guy. But if I am basically walking up, right? I mean, it was literally this big a staircase to go up, and straight, like a really steep angle going up. I'm like, listen, to really increase value, because the attic upstairs is pretty good size, but to do that, now you're going to have to, you can't put a staircase up this steep. So you're going to have to basically put 4 or 5 steps going up, then you put a landing, and then you're going to have to, that's going to take up square footage. It's going to be difficult. You're going to spend an extra $15,000 or $20,000. So if you're going to do it your way, I would suggest you put a staircase in there. You know, well, no, I'm not going to do it that either. So I'm like, okay, so let me just understand this. You're going to finish the downstairs. You're not going to do plumbing. You're not going to do electrical. You're going to put in new baths, and you're going to finish upstairs. You're going to have a problem on this property on many fronts. Well, how do you know? I'm like, well, it's called experience, and it's called just basic math, that the line coming in is the 3/4 line into the property. Now you're going to basically, it was built for barely a 3-1, right? Meaning 1 bath and 1 kitchen. So now you're going to put a second bath upstairs. Your probably water pressure is not enough. So you're going to have to change the whole line. Now you touch that line. Now Park Ridge is going to make you do all new plumbing, because this is all galvanized plumbing. The plumbing is shot. There's no water pressure in these pipes. You open that. Now it's going to expose that you have cloth wiring in the property. That's going to get exposed. And if you're going to open a can of worms, why do you want to do this, right? You borrowed all the money from somebody in Mastery. Just go ahead and clean the property, boom, put it back on the market, and you make $70,000, right? This is the biggest flip you've ever done. And it's a quick deal. I bet you, even before you close on the property, right? I can probably help you find a buyer for this. Right? And it'll be a nice, great profit. You should laugh all the way to the bank. No, Andrew, that's not what I'm going to do. Okay. I'm like, well, then here's the deal. You're not going to get the full amount from Mastery. You're going to only get about 300 some thousand bucks, and then the rest of it you can borrow it from somebody else. So this gentleman goes out, borrows the rest of it without telling his cousin on a second on this particular property. Like, okay, that's fine. But our Mastery lender is going to be secure. That's 100%, right? Does the rehab his way. Actually, he does a nice rehab. I can't say I have to give the person credit when the credit is due. Siding, they covered up. They did a good job with it. Roof, they did a good job with it. Gutter, soffit, fascia, gutter, they did a good job with it. Now, here's where the problem starts, right? That he didn't change the plumbing, obviously, didn't touch the electrical. He adds a second bathroom upstairs. Nice, beautiful bathroom. And a nice big bedroom upstairs. And here's the problem. Puts it back on the market, on the MLS. And I mean, as you can imagine, just a buttload of people start going through the property because it's such a good location, right? And then nobody will put in a contract. Just every single agent comes in, and then the agent called me, and they start at the time. And I start talking to these agents because I wanted to find out what's going on. And what I realized, and everybody's like, they're all mad. They're like, oh my God, that property is horrible. Blah, blah. I'm like, it's a beautifully done property. The problem was this. What this gentleman had done was the stairs is this narrow. So you could not, right, take anything upstairs, to the extent that he couldn't even take he couldn't basically do a pan upstairs in the shower. Even the tub that he put upstairs, he had to basically get it through the window. They had to rope it up and then to get it through the window because the stairs were so narrow, right? There's no way even you could tilt it and take it upstairs. So the problem was this. Now here you got a 4-bedroom house, 2 full bath, and you have 2 problems. Number one, if somebody buys it, you can't put any furniture. I mean, even a chair will not go upstairs. Why? Because it's just not wide enough, right? A mattress, if you have a thick mattress, I mean, that sucker would get stuck. Now, the whole house is closed up, meaning doors are on, windows are on, everything is on. So to take anything upstairs, you would literally have to take a window off and have it craned in. So how is somebody going to buy the property? Finally, he gets a contract on the property. Calls me. He's like, well, Andrew, see, I told you. I'm like, listen, man, the contract's not going to go through. Is the buyer paying the property cash for it? No, they're FHA. Now, I'm like, what did you sell the property for? He sold the property after doing about $80,000 work. He sold the property for $10,000 more than he would have made just wholesaling the property up front. So I'm like, didn't I tell you to begin with that, hey, please, you don't have to do the work. You'll make a nice, good profit. But he gets greedy, right? He had found a property and he did not have to increase value by doing work in the property. He could have just sold it and boom, made money. See, sometimes people think that just because they're going to put in more work, that means they're going to get rewarded more. You're not going to get rewarded more, especially when it comes to real estate. If you found the property at a good price, just inflate the price, put it right back on the market, and boom, you can make a really good profit, right? And this is important. This gentleman did not understand this. And so I'm like, listen, dude, it's a FHA deal. He's like, yeah, it's FHA. I'm like, it's not going to pass inspection. He's like, well, how do you know? I'm like, well, again. I'm like, man, I've done this a time or two, right? If you have no water pressure in the house because your line coming in is too small, right? It's just not gonna fly. And they're gonna go downstairs to your main electrical box, right? You basically all double taps on there. There's a mess over there because you didn't touch it. And he basically been very creative. It just created another sub panel off of it and then basically piped all the new electricity to it. I'm like, listen, I don't know how you got through this. I don't know how Park Ridge let you get through it. Apparently, he must not have pulled any permits, clearly. I mean, he just somehow got through it. And I'm like, this is going to be a problem, right? Because now the inspector is going to go there and they're going to basically start marking up the whole thing. And now that we know it's messed up, you're going to probably have to disclose this because this has a lot of clearly fire hazards. You have a lot of boxes that you've hidden underneath a drywall, right? Now, if something happens to the property, you're going to have a problem on your hands, right? I'm just saying, Andrew, you're just being negative. I'm like, I'm not just being negative. I'm just telling you, this is my experience. I'm not obviously saying anything to anybody, but this is what's going to happen. Guess what? About 2-3 weeks later, calls me back. Well, I guess you were right. I'm like, well, I don't guess I was right. I know I was right. And I was right not because I was trying to give you a hard time. I was just saying, hey, man, this is going to create problems for you, right? And I say all of this to say this, that it wasn't that I told you so. The issue was that what I was trying to get him to do was not do the work, be happy with 70, 75, 80,000 in a wholesale profit. And just because he did the work doesn't mean he was going to get return on it. Because to do the work properly in the property, you would have really had to start all over again, right? Because it's such an old house. And to do the things that he should have done, number one, he clearly does not know how to manage a budget, and he didn't know he had gotten away on smaller properties by cutting corners all over the place, right? And lying his way through it. You can't do that on bigger properties. And this property was in a price range close to 550, 600,000 in terms of on the back end. And guess what? Doesn't sell it for 600, doesn't sell it for 550, doesn't sell it for 500, ends up selling it almost 200,000 less than what he had initially intended to sell it for. When he sold the property, his cousin ended up taking a short on the property. His cousin had basically a second mortgage on the property that he had given this guy. And when we said, hey, you realize, now because of all of this mess, your poor cousin is going to end up shorted. He's like, oh, yeah, he's a rich guy. It's not a big deal. Why are you guys worried? I'm like, no, we're worried because your cousin who borrowed you the money, right? The mastery person who had lent the money was perfectly fine because we had a first lien on the deal. But the poor cousin ends up, instead of getting his 70,000 back plus interest on it, ends up barely getting 40,000 out of the deal. And I say that to say this, that in this particular case, this problem was a preventable problem. Now he tried to blame, he's like, well, it's the market, it's this, it's that. I'm like, what are you talking about? We've had the hottest market in years, right? People are paying crazy prices for properties. It has nothing to do with the market. This purely has to do with your lack of understanding and your lack of doing things. Like if in the particular cigar store part of it, if I go blame, well, it is the cigar store. It's the problem over there. It's the market. It's not. I put up the store. I decided to dump money in there. And then I decided, hey, I'm not going to do it. I can't be taking my time and running the stupid store because it's not worth it to me money-wise, right? Even if I take a loss. So then is there partially I'm responsible for that? 100%, right? If the manager, I installed the manager over there, Rahul didn't, my other business partner did, I installed him, right? And then he's stealing me blind. Whose fault is it, right? It's my fault. I have to look at it and go, hey, you were foolish to think you're just going to have another, and there was nothing wrong with me trying the idea. But then I can't blame an outside factor. I have to take responsibility for the part of that particular failure in that case, or losing some money over there. In this particular case, this person basically finishes the upstairs, does a beautiful job finishing the upstairs. You just couldn't get up there, right? So if somebody is a bigger dude, there is no way they're going to get up there with those stairs, and certainly if they manage to go sideways and go climb up the stairs, there is no way in heck that they can get any furniture up there. Then how is it that if you can't get up there, his problem was this, that whenever they did the appraisal on it, they just said to him, this is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. They're like, well, but no, we have 4 bedrooms. We have 1 bedroom upstairs and 1 bathroom upstairs. Why are you calling it a 3-bedroom, 1-bath? They're like, yeah, you have the bedroom and you have the bath, and it's beautifully finished. The problem is the appraiser himself was a big dude. He couldn't get up there. He's like, man, if I can't get up there, I can't give you any value because you have no access to it. You might as well have a fully finished upstairs and might as well just bolt it shut, because if you can't use it, under normal circumstances, then guess what? It has no value. And so we ended up, and I had no choice. I mean, I had no choice. I'm like, listen, man, you have two choices here. You're either going to drop the price or get rid of this stupid property, or I'm going to make sure that the person from Mastery forecloses on you. And if they don't do it, I will do it. Because I'm like, you wouldn't follow up. Because I even suggested to him, I'm like, listen, let's just do this. Mistakes are made. Sometimes we all make a mistake. It's no big deal. Let's do this. Let's basically, it's not going to be the best way of doing this now because we're doing it kind of backwards, but let's go in and let's just, again, let's get an architect and let's just reframe it and let's just put stairs going up. Because once the stairs are going up, that's one major problem we have solved. Now, the only other problem we're going to have to overcome is somebody who's willing to live with the low water pressure, or at some point they're going to have to open up walls, cut walls, make a mess, and basically change the lines, right? And then they're going to have to change the line going outside also. And somebody who's going to have to deal with this electrical issue. But I'm like, the area is good enough that we can probably find a buyer if we lower the price. But we got to open up the upstairs. Because if we have no access to the upstairs, you're not going to sell the property in this condition, especially nowhere close to the price. And wouldn't listen. No, Andrew, I think this will work. And guess what? It didn't work. And I wanted to relate to that story from this perspective, that this person, they may want to blame the real estate market, they may want to blame outside factors. But the problem was this, that they did not want to follow the advice. Now you can't go and blame the real estate market. That's no different than people in 2005, 4, 5, and 6 that were buying properties. You have zero cash flow. You're putting everything on the credit, right? And then each time the property supposedly goes up, you're going on vacations, having a time of your life, and then 2008 hits and you're a boom. Now you're like, oh my God, it's the real estate market. No, it's not the real estate market. See, it's understandable if you have a job somewhere, let's say, and you've done everything right. You bought the property correctly. You've owned the property for a period of time. You've been paying everything. Now suddenly somebody gets sick, right? The breadwinner in the family gets sick. Somebody passes away. Somebody loses a job, the factors they cannot control. That is called outside factors. But if you're buying properties that have zero cash flow, they have zero equity, you're just buying it purely from the perspective that, oh my God, the property is going to go up. And guess what happens? The market turns on you. And now the property is not going up. If anything, the prices are collapsing. Guess what? That is not the fault of the real estate market. That is your fault, my friend. If I do it, then it is my fault. My point of this whole story today is this, that we have to look at when something goes right? It's very easy to rejoice and celebrate and say, oh my God, I did everything correctly, right? And basically not pay attention to what happens. Sometimes what happens to people in real estate is that they get into real estate and they just get dumb lucky. Like literally, this gentleman on his first property he did a flip on was in Carroll Street. I remember looking at that property and I'm like, you know something? This property, you're going to have a issue. And the issue was he had never checked. There was a floodplain in the back. And when I went there for the first time, I saw the property. I'm like, hey, man, there's a floodplain. He's like, how do you know? I'm like, well, just look at the map. If you look at the map, there's a blue line behind it. There's probably a creek, which is a dry creek, and it probably floods whenever there is a lot of rain. And I bet you, if I was a betting man, this is probably in a floodplain. He's like, no, that's not possible. I've never seen water. I'm like, just because you haven't seen water doesn't mean the area doesn't flood. I'm like, you bought the property in the middle of, after the spring rains, so you probably haven't seen it. But I had suggested to him beforehand to check. He hadn't. Now, on that property, he gets away with it, and he got away with it. And then when the buyer bought the property, what happened was that the buyer agreed to pay for flood insurance because their family lives down the street. Now, most buyers would have reduced the price, but this buyer, just because emotional buy, bought the property. He gets away, makes about $40,000-$50,000. And so what in his mind, instead of learning from that experience, he's like, oh my God, I know everything. Second property, another one home run deal, he gets away with it. The third property he got caught with. And I told him, I'm like, man, listen, you can't when you do something crazy, right? We've all done it. The other day, I was going to Naperville in the evening, and I start. Generally, I will not do it. Sometimes we all have our stupidity episodes. That night, it was my stupidity episode, right? I'm going 90 or 100 miles an hour in the Ferrari. Somebody pulls up in a AMG C-Class Mercedes, and they start racing. I don't know what the hell got into me, so I put the foot down. I'm literally 120 to 160 and accelerating. And this kid comes, he's basically behind me, and suddenly I see traffic, so I slow down. This kid comes up, and he's dodging traffic all over the place. I literally scared the bejesus out of myself. And I take the exit 59, he pulls up. He's like, man, you're going to beat me. And I realized, I'm like, listen, man, you're probably in your 20s, I'm in my 40s. I was stupid to start racing, and I realized it when I'd already, I'm going past 160, and I'm like, this is stupid, right? Boom, I slowed down. Because I'm like, what am I doing? Now that, if I get into an accident at that time, hurt somebody else, hurt myself, mess up myself, you can't say, well, it's the Ferrari's fault. No, who was stupid? And I never do it. That night, God only knows what got into me. Not a good decision, but you can't say it is an outside factor that made me drive that way. I made the decision. And a lot of times what happens in life is we make decisions. Sometimes we may have done all the research, we've done everything, and things don't work out. Is that possible? Sure. But then you can truly say, hey, I did the best I could. But for a lot of people, they make the wrong decisions. They decide that they want to take inappropriate action like this person. And then when they don't get the result that they want, then they want to blame somebody else. They have learned zero from that particular action, right? What my point of today's story is this, that when you make a decision, when you decide something, and maybe you made a mistake, I've done it at times, but then you at least have to say, hey, listen, now looking back in hindsight, maybe these are the 4 things I did incorrectly. If I had not done these 4 things incorrectly at the time, I didn't know maybe even, right, that what was the right way to think. But yet now looking back at it in hindsight, these are the things that I've done correctly. See, sometimes in life, you can do every single thing, cross every single T, do every single thing, right? And yet things don't work out. Then you can say, hey, I genuinely tried my level best. But you can't be doing crazy things, right? You can't drive irrationally and then say, oh my God, oops, it's the car's fault, or it's outside factor's fault, or it's the other kid that basically pulls up and wants to race, and I'm behaving like a fool. I hope you got something out of it. The story that I shared with you, there's a reason. Obviously, I did not want to bring up the lender's name, neither this particular person's name, because we basically, after this transaction, we're like, you're no longer going to be in Mastery, because we do not believe. Making a mistake is perfectly fine. No big deal, right? If you make a mistake, you learn from it, perfectly fine. But what bothered me is the callous behavior that it doesn't matter whose money it is. If it's your cousin's money, that is hard-earned money. That is not money that you get because you just, oops, it's not my money, my cousin has a lot of money, so it's okay for them to lose money. That is not a type of behavior we will tolerate. Having said that, this is Andrew Holmes. Again, you're listening to Burr Cashflow Investors. Please refer your friends, family, other people that may have interest in real estate investing, and we try to share information that's relevant and that will help you hopefully get smarter every day. Having said that, we will talk to you on Monday. Thanks.